We're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to our Cohort 2 meeting. We have also invited our Cohort 1 folks as well, because we are going to be going over some information that might be useful for them. So today we have information on the child outcome summary. We have our early childhood special education team that is going to provide kind of a high level overview of the COAS reporting requirement. And then we also have information today from Ellie Cookson and our own Jennifer Hopkins on enrollment in the enrolling cohort students and the quarterly child count. And then this wasn't on the agenda, but I've asked Barb McGowan if she could give everyone just a little bit of information. We've been getting some questions on from school districts in Cohort 2 about how to demonstrate where they are spending their allocation funds. So she's going to pop on for a few minutes and talk about that. So at this point, I will turn it over to Susie Perry, Tricia Kurt, and Julie Giacconi.
Thanks, Sandy. Let's get my screen sharing happening here. Where did it go? There we go. You'd think after all this time that I would have it at the tip of my fingers. And this here. And this. Just a moment. There we go. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how we measure children's outcomes in early childhood special education. This process is called the Child Outcome Summary, or COAS. It's really about two big things, making sure we can see how children are progressing in meaningful skills and making sure we're meeting the reporting requirements that connect local work in our schools to state and federal accountability. The goal today is to walk you through not just what the COAS is, but also why it matters for children, for families, for programs, and for funding. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of how the process works and how it supports your work with students. I have some teammates here that are going to be presenting. We have Julie Giacconi and Tricia Kurt. And so I think everybody knows which slides they're working on today. And I think, Julie, you're up first.
Certainly. Thanks, Susie. So today's topics, child outcome summary, we're going to be talking about why the COS matters, the purpose of it, what we're reporting, when we report it, what that process looks like, how it's reported, the validity of the data, reliability, the requirements, the importance of understanding child outcomes, exactly what we are reporting. We're going to be discussing observation, the pieces of collaborative teaming, the rating process, and we're going to be looking at tools that support the decision-making process for COS.
So this is my slide. So you may be asking why COAS? So the COAS process is important because it's not just about compliance, it's about making sure we know whether children are making progress in real functional skills. The data helps us make better decisions in the classroom, program, and state levels. It also fulfills our federal reporting requirements, where SAUs report to the state and the state reports to the U.S. Department of Education. Ultimately, this is how we can show that the resources and instruction we provide are truly making a difference for children and families. So the child outcome summary isn't just another piece of paperwork we have to fill out. The real purpose is to make sure we can see whether children are making progress and that the supports we're putting in place are actually benefiting them. At the state level, this information helps us check whether the funding that comes for early childhood special education is really making a difference for kids and families. So it's both about improving practice here on the ground and about showing accountability for the resources that support these programs.
So I think it's important to keep in mind that states are required by federal law to report on child outcomes. These outcomes result from the specially designed instruction that we've written into the IEP, the frequency and the delivery of that specially designed instruction. So this information goes from the school systems, reported to the state, the SEA, and then we report to the feds. I think it's also important to remember the return on investment for that specially designed instruction. The energy, the effort, the funding that we put into preschool special education, there's an estimated 7 to 13% return on investment that shows up in reduced special education services later on, reduction in suspension and expulsion, increased completion in high school, and technical advancement to technical school and college attendance and so forth.
When we look at child outcomes, we focus on three key areas that give us a complete picture of how the child is growing and learning in preschool special education. These three outcomes are also the ones that every SAU is required to report to the state, and then the state submits them to the federal level. The first outcome is about how children interact with others, building friendships, learning to share, taking turns, and developing the skills they need to manage emotions in a healthy way. This is really about the foundation for relationships and learning. The second outcome looks at what children are learning and how they use what they know. Things like language, problem solving, early literacy, and numeracy. It's about their growth as learners and how they apply skills in everyday situations. The
What
third
we've done, show you, this is the European model run, and we're going to kind of go back.
The third outcome focuses on whether children can use their skills to get their needs met. That could be asking for help, using communication to express wants, or using self-help skills like feeding or dressing. It's about independence and being able to navigate their world. Together, these three areas give us a well-rounded picture of how children are developing, not just academically, but socially, emotionally, and functionally. We're comparing growth from when they enter the program to when they exit, so we can really see progress over time.
So we want to take a look at and kind of help you get a sense of how many kids that we would be reporting in this child entry and exit data. So schools are responsible for obtaining the entry scores as children enroll into the program and exit scores for children who leave preschool special education. They're also reporting these scores they report them to the SEA annually, as Trish and Julie told you. In planning for conducting the COAST process, it might be helpful to know that on average, 50% of the children that enroll in the preschool program will then exit that program that year. So you would be responsible for about half of the kids who enrolled conducting that exit COAST process on those kids. So the COAST process will include a rating of children as they enter, and if they don't have a score, and at exit prior to leaving the program. So in Maine last year, for example, we had about 6,159 preschool age children enroll over the course of the school year. And then that same year, about 3,000 children exited from that preschool to kindergarten, or they left special education or moved. So that's the population of kids that we would be conducting the exit scores on.
So the major activities in the child outcome summary process include forming a collaborative team, the collection of performance data, observations, assessments, and other tools. And information can include parent reports, observation in the classroom, parents' observation, results from formal and informal assessments. We take this information and we compare the child's current functional skills to what's expected for what is expected for typical expectations for that age. Then, based on that, there's a 7-point rating scale. We assign, as a collaborative team, a rating for each one of those 3 outcome areas, and then we submit the entry and exit data to the state agency.
The COAS process relies on 3 main tools. First, we have the list of outcome areas we're assessing, the 3 that we talked about earlier: positive social emotional skills, acquisition and use of knowledge and skills, and the use of appropriate behaviors to meet needs. Second, we have a 1 to 7 rating scale to capture how close the child is to age expectations. And third, we use descriptions of what typical development looks like at different ages, so we have a consistent point of reference when assigning ratings. There are also nice-to-have tools that can make things easier for practitioners, and those will be shared and explored more in a future follow-up training.
This is the list of functional skills and behaviors that are rated in the child outcome summary process. As Tricia described, these 3 outcome areas represent cross-cutting skills or functional skills and behaviors that help children to tackle daily tasks, connect with others, and gain independence. Each state reports on the progress their preschool-age children have made during their time in the early childhood special education program. Within each outcome area, there are 6 skill bundles. So there are 18 areas of functioning that are observed, rated, and reported. The link on the page will connect you with the infographic that you're seeing here. It's available in English and in Spanish, as well as to further describe those cross-cutting domains. So let's take a look next at the rating tool that's used by the IEP team. The functional skills are rated using a 1 to 7 scale, grouping the ratings into 3 levels of functioning. This is a collaborative activity determined by a consensus of the team. And the team will determine the degree to which the child is demonstrating age-expected functioning. So parents, teachers, and other caregivers share anecdotes about their child's activities and determine whether they're keeping pace with age expectation or functioning like a younger child. Again, we have a link to this tool on this page, and all of the slides are shared with you in the follow-up email from Jen. And finally, we recognize that there's a great deal of information on this slide, but we wanted to share a commonly used age anchoring tool, which is another prominent tool in the COAS process. Age anchoring examines a child's functional abilities, skills, and behaviors in relation to what's expected for children at a similar chronological age. The COAS process focuses on functional abilities rather than isolated or discrete skills that a child may have demonstrated at one time or another. The age anchoring process requires the team to understand the timing and sequence of development that enable young children and recognize the skills involved in their demonstration of positive social relationships, acquiring knowledge and skills, and taking action to meet needs. Practitioners recognize that children typically acquire these skills within a certain time frame, and this document groups and describes the functional skills expected for each age group for each of the 3 outcome areas. It breaks it down to, if you have for very young children, it can be used for early intervention for 0 to 3 months and 3 to 9 months and 9 to 12 months. So it has nice chunks of developmental skills collected in these 3 outcome areas. Team members will be asked to think about how the child's functioning compares with what would be expected for a child their age, and how a family's culture may affect what is considered age expected when rating the child's development. And we have the link to this tool right here on the document on the PowerPoint.
So We have a variety of ways that we can collect information. And on this screen are published tools that actually come with an ECTA crosswalk. So for example, if I were the speech language pathologist on the team, and during the initial evaluation, I used the preschool language scale 5, the PLS 5. On here, you can see it's down underneath there, but there is an actual crosswalk that goes with that. So I could take a look back at my protocol and take a look at, let's say, 1A, and it would, the crosswalk would then link to the specific child outcome. So I could use that data from that particular published assessment tool as part of the process for determining the rating. And I really want to go back and reiterate too, that this should be a collaborative process. It shouldn't take place in a silo. So again, as an example, as the speech pathologist on the team, that would be my input towards language and communication. I think if we could, if it's possible, if folks want to put into the chat, maybe some of the published tools that they have used during evaluations or assessments. For example, I know it's not listed on here, but I've used the Self Preschool 3. So I would go into the chat and just put the Self Preschool 3. So I don't know if anyone else wants to put some examples, especially some, I know we've got some folks here from Cohort 1. And if they've gone through this process, they wanted to put anything into the chat for a published tool. And as Susie said, you'll be getting a copy of this PowerPoint. So the links are to the crosswalks are in here. The links to this, where this particular page lives on the ECTA website. And the purple arrows are pointing to assessments that Maine has used or commonly uses in this process. And I don't know if anyone else wants to put anything into the chat, but if
Julie,
not,
I think this has been so new for our Cohort 1 that I think they've been, you know, kind of using the tools that we've recommended here. If that makes sense.
Yep. Yes. I think what's important to emphasize again is that it is a collaborative process where there should be a team, and there should also be input from the family towards the 3 outcomes, the child outcomes. Did you want to advance to the next slide, Susie?
Sure.
So there's additional data options for the COS process. Again, it's a collaborative process, and each member of the team is bringing to the table assessment information so that there can be a collaborative rating that is decided upon. The entry, there's 2 requirements that are federally required for the COS, and that is that we report on child outcome summaries at the entry. And this is completed before the start of the Part B preschool special education services. So prior to the start of those services, the child outcome summary data needs to be reported at the state level or to the state level. Again, data is collected from the initial evaluation, including input from the family. You can collect data. I know Head Start in previous webinars, Head Start has a wealth of data that they can contribute. The early intervention for me, that team has information that can contribute to those entry COS pieces. And then the other requirement is that this is reported at exit. So you want to think about it as we're reporting on the child outcome summaries prior to the child receiving specially designed instruction through Part B special education in preschool. And then we're going to report on exit out. So those are for children receiving services for at least 6 months immediately upon discharge of services. Okay, so after they've stopped receiving those services within Part B, we want to be reporting on, okay, as a result of that specially designed instruction, what are the child outcomes? What progress has been made? So that information could be taken from quarterly reports from all the service providers. It can be gleaned in combination with annual reports, anecdotal information from the family, high scope, teaching strategies, goals, and so forth.
Thanks, Julie. So IEP teams that are conducting this COAS process will document their decisions for each of the 3 outcome areas. The team captures and records their discussion, their evidence for their ratings, and they'll include information gathered from published tools. To accomplish this, we have created a sample tool for recording team decisions that you see in the picture here. And this tool is available on the website and through the link on this page. Down here at the lower portion where it says sample tools for IEP team use, the COAS note-taking guide during age anchoring discussions. Now, this document is made by ECTA, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. And what it would be really nice for is as teams are coming together, each member of the team may have their own perspective and they can document some of the information about each of those bundle areas in the 3 outcomes, the 18 areas, and maybe they'll have information that would be helpful to making that team decision about the rating for each of that outcome area. And it includes things on there like, well, what is the expected development? What is the child demonstrating? And which of the 7 scores might that most be related to? Is it age expected functioning, or is it foundational, or really looking at a child functioning as a much younger child? So those are 2 nice documents that are able to be used to capture and record the evidence of the team decision. Next, we wanted to share with you some information about some professional development. And the Department of Education is utilizing a learning management system called Engine to offer professional development for practitioners across the state. And we're in the process of uploading the Early Childhood National Technical Assistance Center modules for the COAS process. There are short chapters that practitioners can take for free that will result in PD hours that are appropriate for any practitioners, regardless of the COAS process that you're using. Our goal is that each team member thoroughly understands the components of the COAS process and that the practices will result in valid and reliable child outcomes data.
So administrator decision points for the child outcome summary process. In the past, I've worked with districts, and administrators in districts made the determination as to whether or not published assessment tools were required as part of the information contributing to this decision, contributing to the rating piece. Other administrators in other districts have made decisions as far as absolutely positively requiring the family input piece. So I think what's important to remember is that you do have a variety of options for the information that you're gathering and how it's going to be used to make those decisions with regard to rating for those 3 outcomes. But I want to really emphasize again, it really needs to be collaborative. This should not be taking place in a silo where the speech pathologist, for example, is working alone, and special ed teachers working alone. It needs to be a collaborative process. What that teaming process looks like, Susie just went over. There's some tools to document those decision points, the information that was gathered, how it was gathered. And again, collaborative, I can't emphasize it enough, where the team comes together and reviews the data that is available with regard to, at that point in time, where the child is performing in comparison to typically developing peers.
Right, Julie. So I think what's really, one of the takeaways here is that we're all using the 1 to 7 rating scale. We're all basing our decisions on age expected development, and that we are all recording the information and have some evidence to show, how we came to the decision that we made. And so there are a number of ways that you can come to that 1 to 7 score or scale, but that it is that team process that's really important to get information from families and the other practitioners working with the child. So with that, we also have some great questions that have been asked over the course of the year by Cohort 1 schools that we thought would be important to include here today. The first one was, are we required to do the COAST process with all children in the classroom, both with and without disabilities? And the answer for that one is no, that the COAST process reflects 2 point-in-time assessments of its preschool children with disabilities. We do recommend, and it is a best practice, that ongoing progress monitoring of all children, is a best practice, and that it includes observations and documentations of children's performance, including work samples and things like photos and videos. It's great. And but as far as the COAST process, it's only required for children with disabilities. The next question that we got was, is there a mandated tool or process for conducting the COAST process? And there is no mandated tool. Some states do have a mandated tool. Other states are offering the same tools and resources that we were referencing in this presentation. And others, like Julie said, have a required include some type of tool that as one of the tools. So data to complete the COAST process needs to be gathered early on and then just prior to the child leaving, and that practitioners that are involved in the COAST process are expected to have a thorough understanding of the tools and the procedures, and that you use that same tool and procedure across the district would be another important, so that we are always having apples to apples. Over the past years, Sandy has made available some trainings on the Battelle Developmental Inventory. And was there also a DAISY training, Sandy? I forget, yeah?
Yes.
And so we have been making available some great trainings to make that another tool in your toolbox. And that has, those two have the crosswalks so that you can funnel that information into those 3 outcome areas. Whereas like otherwise you'll just be looking at each of those specific domains of development. The COAST process takes those domains and funnels them into each of the 3 outcome areas. But no matter the tool, the process must result in valid and reliable scores. And then finally, how can we prepare to utilize the COAST process validly and reliably? And there are trainings and resources available for teams to ensure that they are knowledgeable about it. There is PD through the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center right now online through online modules and guides and practice activities. But as I said, we're going to have hours available. I'm targeting the beginning of October to have that uploaded and ready for anybody to get those PD hours to their teachers. And that additional PD materials that are linked here are the COAST process online modules. There's activities if you wanted to do some professional development. There's to strengthen COAST knowledge and skills, sort of like nice group activities for your own PD sessions that you have, and some nice frequently used resources, a list of those from the ECTA.
Susie, we have a couple questions in the chat I think would be helpful for all of us to hear about.
Great.
Heidi mentioned that she just had an initial IEP meeting today and she's worried that she hadn't done this before the meeting and because she didn't know about it until this moment. And so can you explain the timing of this and how it's incorporated, this discussion, how it's incorporated? Is it an IEPT meeting? Can it be separate from an IEPT meeting? So just if you could talk about that a bit.
Sure. First of all, there is some really great guidance about how to integrate this COAST process into the an IEP or evaluation process that's developed by the ECTA. But we understand that this is new for you all, and that it's something that haven't provided all of the training. Nobody has all of the training up front. So the idea is that as soon as possible, as the child is enrolled in the school or identified as a preschool age child with a disability, that we worked to identify those ratings for the 3 outcome areas. You have specialists, right, Sandy, that are assigned to each of the school districts that can help with this process and provide you with some technical assistance on how to get that going. We can help bring those tools that we have on this PowerPoint presentation and help you utilize some of those tools. But ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is that there's the greatest amount of time between getting those entry scores and getting those exit scores, because we know how much influence and impact you're having on those children's skills during their preschool career with you. And so we want to make sure that you're benefiting and you're able to show that, everything that you've contributed to that child between the time that he arrived and the time that they left. It's really only about 18 months. If we count it all up, there's only about 18 months that we have them with us. And the average is like 17 months that kids are in a program. So, the sooner you can get it done, the better, and getting them done just before the child exits and not too early, so that you get the benefit from showing how much growth that child has developed. And I know that's not a perfect answer, but it's kind of what all I can provide to you for right now, because we're not penalizing people for not getting it done. I don't think we're really, we know that everybody's just starting on this journey, and we would like to be able to help you with that, answer questions, and make sure that you're able to do it in as reliable a method as possible.
Doesn't necessarily have to be connected to an IEP meeting, though. Can you just confirm that? Yeah.
No,
okay.
it
And
does
you
not.
don't need parent permission to, this is more of a informal, like not a screening so much as a kind of an informal assessment. And in terms of the adverse effect form, Lisa, if you are at an initial meeting, and I don't know if you wanted to answer that. I don't want to misspeak, Susie, but I think that the adverse effect form, it might be information that you have in the adverse effect form, but it's not required to do an adverse effect form. Correct?
I'm not sure what all is included in the adverse effect form. Is that probably something from CDS?
It's Maine specific, so you might not have an understanding of the adverse effect form. But Lisa, your adverse effect form is based on evaluations that are standardized, and this is not a standardized evaluation. So, again, if you have this information and you're completing an adverse effect form, you might have data or some information from this more informal assessment, just as you would potentially put in a classroom observation, and kind of use that in your understanding of adverse effect, but it's really a separate tool. So we have to submit this data to the federal government, and it is a requirement for the age group. But I believe that at this point, we are not today going to overwhelm you with this, but we're going to show you where and how, as a Department of Education, we capture that data moving forward. So again, this is a high-level overview of what this is. The biggest point to remember is you want to have these conversations as soon as you can when a child enters into a program, because the next time you're going to talk about this is when you're doing your exit, is when they move to kindergarten. And so you want to see really the growth over time of what this child is doing. And again, it's a federal reporting requirement for the DOE. So the last question I will, okay, we answered, don't need formal consent. And Deb mentions, lucky, and the initial cost is already done for children already identified in your districts. Nice news there, a little gift to you. And then, so for students who are identified when we took over, should this assessment be located in the files? we received. Remember, Pat, it's not like an assessment that is there. It's not really like there's not a protocol for it. There's different tools we use for it. It's
Hey,
yeah.
Erin, some children may be leaving CDS with an exit score. And so that exit score, depending on when they left CDS and are starting in your school district, it might be the entry score they're using. And what we've done in the past is provide you with the entry scores that are already completed for the children that are enrolling in your district. And so you will know which kids you have an entry score for and which kids you do not. And we will get that information to you as soon as possible. And then you'll just be responsible for doing the exit score or an entry score for a child who doesn't have one. So,
And don't forget that you all have folks attached to your team who can have individual meetings with you if you have more detailed questions and concerns about this process, or and want to provide additional training to your staff. The most important thing is, you want to make sure you have multiple perspectives, including parent perspective, when you're doing this. So how will we enter data into the ECTA website? Do we create an account?
So no, the data that you're going to be submitting to the state will be submitted currently it's through a spreadsheet that we're going to send to you that will have all of the children's entry scores, if there are any listed on that spreadsheet. And then you will, for any kids that don't have an entry score, you'll do the COAST process for entry. And then at the end, prior to them leaving, going on to kindergarten or exiting special education, or leaving your district, you will conduct the COAST process as an exit score for that child as long as they've been in the program for 6 months. And like Erin was saying, that this was designed to be a pretty high level. We have follow-up trainings that we are planning on making available that are much more detailed, and you can invite your teachers to them. And ultimately, I'm hoping that everybody is able to take the ECTA training, the modules that will make available through the Engine LMS platform, and that will really clarify some of the processes. But what we shared before is that you, as the district administrator, you'll need to make a decision about what that process involves. Is it a team meeting that happens at the IEP or the evaluation to get the entry score? What documents do you want the team to have in hand as they're having that discussion so that they can rate the children's performance on those 3 outcome areas? And what will be that documentation process look like? We showed you a copy of what that documentation process, what the tool could be. It's a nice tool. It's a PDF. It's a fillable PDF that you can download and you can share electronically with your teams that they can use and fill out and then save to the child's cumulative folder or their special ed folder. And yes, it's for every child who has an IEP. Child who has a speech language impairment as their primary disability category also needs to be rated in all 3 outcome areas.
Again, this is really new information, especially for cohort 2. And it's new still for cohort 1, who, went through some training during the year to obtain this information sometimes, so I just would say that at this point, please reach out to your contact if you have further information. And if you don't know, if you don't know whether or not you have your list of students with those scores from CDS, or if you have questions, again, your teachers won't know yet about this process, which is significant. So we have to, work to get them trained to be able to understand this process. But it is, although best practice is to get that involved in your IEP team meeting discussion, it is not a requirement to have an IEP meeting in order to do this. So I just want to be clear. It's really what the goal is here is to understand the growth in these 3 comprehensive areas that occur through preschool inclusion of participating in preschool programming. And that's why it's required, so that you can see the nice growth that's happening. And then we have the obligation for the federal reporting. And the federal reporting is the thing that gets us access to IDEA funds, which is why it's very important for us to do it. So that is, but it's very new for all of us who are not CDS people. I would say CDS folks are old hat at this. So if you have a great connection at CDS and you're like, who do you know? I mean, it could be something that you work with CDS to support understanding how to do this. Maybe you, so depending on where you are and how you're connected, it might be a good thing to work on with them.
Okay. Thank you, Erin. So next we have Allie Cookson and Jen Hopkins, who are going to present on child count and registration.
Thank you, Sandy. All right. So, am I okay? Everyone can see my screen? Good. Okay, yeah. Sandy, perfect. I love it. All right, so I am Allie Cookson. I'm the data quality trainer for the Maine Department of Education data team. And today we're going to talk about enrolling students for early childhood cohorts. And I want to just kind of preface this all by saying that most of this information is going to be entered into our state synergy system, and your data specialist in your in your school district will probably be the one to enter this data. So please make sure that they get this information, and know that this may not be a system that you necessarily need to get into, but maybe something that you might want to have access to in terms of being able to see the data that's being entered. So as I said, all of our resources that we have listed for this are for our Synergy data. So Synergy, we talked last spring that we would be moving into a new system called Connect. That transition has not yet happened yet. We have extended the implementation of the Connect system. And so this year we are maintaining Synergy. So all of the data that you are entering for this enrollment information will go into State Synergy. Most of it will be based on what's in your student information system locally, which is in most cases PowerSchool, Infinite Campus, Web to School. Some of us are using Rediker and some are using a local version of Synergy. So your local student information system will export the data that can be uploaded here. Again, your data specialist has that information on how to do that work. But the uploads will include a student enrollment, student personal, which is demographic data, economic status, and then special education data, which we'll go into a little bit more detail of what that's going to look like. So for student enrollments, this should include all of your students within your catchment area who receive service, whose services are funded by the district and have an IEP that has already started. So these are students enrolled in Synergy are students who have already started receiving services. So make sure that it's only those ones that are going into state Synergy enrollment. Kimberly Hall has put together a really great visual of how to enroll students who are in cohorts, and making sure that you know which students should go into state Synergy and which ones should have the enrollment process completed for them. So starting with a request for service, when you have a request received, does the child reside in the catchment area? If no, is there a superintendent's agreement? If no, obtain a superintendent's agreement. If the student does reside in the catchment area, is the child at least 2 years and 9 months of age and currently enrolled in IDEA Part C? If no, you do not need to enroll them. If yes, is there a signed consent form from the parents to evaluate the child for services? If no, you would need to obtain that if you already have that information. Is the child between the ages of 3 and 5 and eligible for IDEA Part B services? If no, you would not enroll that student. If yes, has the child been evaluated and has an active IEP? If no, you would need to evaluate and then determine if services are required. If the answer is yes, and or after the receipt of those evaluations, will the student be physically attending a school in your SAU? If yes, you would enroll the student in pre-K in your student information system as you would any student who's attending your school. If the answer is no, that they're not attending in your school, physically attending your school, enroll the student as a pre-K student in your student information system and have a default attendance to present remote for their 1 day of attendance. So I'll get into a little bit more about what that looks like as we go through the presentation. So when you have a student that you're enrolling, you would enroll them with a grade of pre-K. The start date would be when the student started receiving services, or it would be the start of your school year. So it may depend. If you have a student who's returning from last year, their start date would be the start date of the school year. But if you have a student that's starting at some point throughout the year, that would be the start date of their IEP. If you have students who are looking to enroll prior to an IEP start date, those would be students that you would only report on the sheets that Jen will be talking about. They would not be enrolled in State Synergy. All of the students who are enrolled in State Synergy for the purposes of cohorts will be listed as a FTE 0, which is a full-time student. There would be, even if they're off-site, they are still considered a full-time student if they're receiving services from the SAU. When enrolling students, they also would need a special education status for cohorts. And so 3 to 5 year olds would need to have a PK code. Start date would be the start of services when this district started, when the SAU started receiving or providing services to the student. In our special education data dictionary, we have all of the codes for those 3 to 5 pre-K codes listed. So you can go in and you can see what those options are. It may be beneficial to reach out to your data specialist to make sure that they are using the correct code for your student and the setting that they would need. If you have a student who is attending out of district, but they are in your catchment area and you are providing services to them, but maybe they're attending a different setting, you would enroll the student in state reporting. And for your local assignment, you may have to have a specific little classroom for them to go into so that you can have tracking of their attendance a little bit separately from your actual pre-K classroom. In this, it's going to depend on your student information system. Again, most of us are using either PowerSchool, Infinite Campus, Rediker, Web to School, or local versions of Synergy. It's going to look different depending on your student information system, what that data, what that process will look like. That would be, again, something either to reach out to your technology director or your student data specialist. They may be the same person, and determine how that enrollment can look locally. For attendance purposes with students who are off-site, so students who are in pre-K in general are exempt from daily attendance reports. So even if you're reporting attendance for them, they are considered exempt. And if you don't have any attendance for a student entered, including pre-K students, it's not going to allow your superintendent to certify your daily attendance report at the end of the school year. So you will have to have some layer of attendance for them. We do recommend tracking attendance for your students who are in pre-K. So you would just need to track your students' attendance for those who are in school. For offsite students, again, we recommend a status of present and a modality of remote. So you would just have, for those offsite students, you can also just report a 1 day of attendance so that you can still certify your report and you'll be all set with those ones. Once the data have been entered into state synergy, there's a process where they move up to NEO. which is where you can actually view some resources that you can use to help you fill out the spreadsheets that Jen will be talking about momentarily. So in NEO, the attending student details report is a really great resource that you can utilize. And in order to get there, you would log into NEO. You have to have an account. If you don't have an account, you would have your superintendent submit an access request form on your behalf in order to get in. And you have to have an active staff assignment in order for us to process that. Once you get the information that you have an account, you would be able to go into student data, student reports, and then the attending student details report. Here's what that process would look like. You would log into NEO, and this would be your screen that you would see. You would have maybe fewer options or maybe the same number of options depending on your role in your district up here in the top. But the one that you're going to go to is going to be student data. From here, you're going to navigate to student reports, either from the top menu bar or the bottom underneath Welcome to Student Data. Click here to enter student reports. And then it's going to bring up a big long list of all of the reports that we have due throughout the year for SAUs. And the attending student details will alphabetically be listed up at the top. Or well, near the top of enrollment. So once we click into that, it's actually going to open up a really long report, horizontally. So I do recommend exporting this file using the little floppy disk up here at the top. You can export to Excel, and then you would be able to use this to help you fill out some of your information that's on the sheets again that Jen will cover in just a moment. So when you export this, you'll get a copy of this presentation too, I believe. Sandy, is that correct? Yeah. So once you have this, there is I've highlighted the rows or the columns that would be really helpful when you're filling out your form for your quarterly cohort reporting. So you can use these columns to help you fill out what Jen is going to get into in the next section.
Great, thank you. So this, if you're part of cohort 1, this will look very familiar to you. We have made a couple adjustments to it, but it's a very long spreadsheet. So I've kind of broken it into several different slides. So this particular slide, you'll just put the date, which is coming right up, will be the October 1st child count, and this will come out to you shortly. You'll just put the attending SAU, the attending SAU ID, the resident SAU, resident SAU ID, the town, and the resident code, town code. So you can go to the next slide, Allie. This section, if some students will have a superintendent's agreement to attend a different preschool, you would put yes or no, and then that superintendent's agreement needs to be emailed to myself or Holly Green as we keep those on file. You'll put the service provider location, which would either be the SAU, or if the child's attending a community school, such as a Head Start program, you would put the name of the program in that location. The FAPE provider location would only be added if it's different than where the child attends school. So if the child attends a private childcare and receives services at school for some reason, then you would put that information there. It's very rare that you'll see that happen. The enrollment start date, which Allie just talked about, you'll put the date that you entered the child into the data system, their name, the student ID, which you will get from Synergy, will go in here, and then you just finish out the rest, the sex, date of birth, their age as of October 1st, and their grade, which it's going to be pre-K all the time, odds are. Now we'll go to the next slide. This is where we've kind of changed things up a little bit this year, mostly to help when we do some reporting out at the end of the year of children and their disability categories. So you'll put yes or no if they have an IEP. You'll enter the IEP date. And if they have an IEP, you'll enter the disability code. And there is a cheat sheet, which is at the very last slide, that will give you the information. There you go, right down there, it says disability codes. And you will just click that link and it'll bring you to the sheet where it'll explain autism is this code, speech will be this code, and then you can enter it into that section of the spreadsheet. And Allie, you can go back to the one we were just looking at. Perfect. So then you'll put if the child is a state agency client or not. And if this particular child has an IEP and perhaps they moved, you would put an exit date, and then the reason would be they moved out of state. And then that closes out that child. Now, if they're in child find, and this is where Allie was talking about that you will not enter a child that is in child find into the data system until they have an IEP, and this is where we note them on this spreadsheet. Because you do receive an allocation for each child in child find of $1,000. So this is where we need to find this. This is where this information comes in handy because then we'll know how many children are in child find and how much to pay you out for that. So you'll put yes or no if the child's in child find. Don't worry about the ESY column right now. We'll discuss that at the end of the school year. And in order to receive funding for child find, you have to email us the parental consent of evaluation that has been signed. And that can go to Holly or myself. And that pretty much sums up the spreadsheet. I see a quest. I'm sorry. Down here, we'll give you just some clues to what a state agency client is. And it just kind of gives you a few little directions on there. If you're having trouble filling out the spreadsheet or you just want a second set of eyes to look at it before you submit to Holly and myself, just feel free to reach out. I can jump on a call at any time and walk you through the spreadsheet. When I do send it out, I have given 3 examples on the top. So you can kind of use that as a guide. And I tried to hit each category so you could see that in an example. But as far as child find goes, we'll be sending out the spreadsheet, collecting the information for October 1st count. After we review the data, it goes to Paula Gravel, and then Paula does her magic, and then you get payment.
And if there are any questions about how to enter data into Synergy or how to find the report or access to NEO, please feel free to reach out to MEDMS, MEDMS.support. There's no O there, that's a typo, at maine.gov. So medms.support at maine.gov. Or you can reach out to myself directly, alexandra.cookson at maine.gov, and I can help you with that enrollment information as well.
So there is a question in the chat, and it looks like Paula answered it, but I just want to make sure. Just want to confirm that this sheet, the spreadsheet, is what is used to count our students. And do we not have them as part of our upload to Synergy?
So if students are attending, they should be entered into Synergy. If they're only in child find, they would not be entered into state Synergy. But if they are enrolled and they are attending services, they should be enrolled in the state Synergy system.
Ultimately, you need to do both.
Both. Okay.
You need to do both the uploads into Synergy and the spreadsheet.
And then
Eventually, we will hopefully not have to have you do both, but right now we still have to have you do both. So if you want funding, please do both.
And then,
yes, it is
sorry, Paula.
I'm sorry, Sandy. It
Go
is
right ahead.
quarterly.
Answer it.
Each first day of each quarter is the day that we're asking you to enter the information and provide it to us within a week so that we can give you funding as early in the first month of each quarter as possible. So 10-1 is coming right up. And we want to give you your funding quickly, so get it to us as quickly as possible. And so that's before I get on to Melanie's next question about the financial information, which is going to include Barbara as well. I just want to make sure that all the questions about the quarterly enrollments have been answered any other questions about that process.
Is a question about the spreadsheet is sent each quarter, and yes, it is sent each quarter, and you'll receive a reminder that it is due.
And I want to thank Allie and Jen. They did a great job on this presentation. Amazing. Without the information that they collect, I can't give you your funding and I can't calculate it properly. So please understand how important it is.
Okay, so why don't we, I know that it is a little bit past 4, and I know that we've asked Barb to give a little bit of information about how school districts are demonstrating to the fiscal team how they are spending down that allocation, and that will also answer Melanie's last question that's in the chat. I'll turn it over to Barb.
Good afternoon, everyone. Short and sweet. You provide me with a trial balance at the end of every quarter for Fund 2213 expenditures. A detailed trial balance should come from your business manager and should come to myself and Rebecca Mitchell. And I'll put our email in the chat here. The other requirement that you have is that your business folks do the fourth quarter uploads to MEDMS, Neo, MEDMS, MEFs, whatever you call it in your district. But at this point, as long as funding remains steady and sufficient, there will not be any additional requests for documentation. When we start looking at high cost in district expenditures, then we may be reaching out to you for some more specific information. But at this point, if you do your quarterly uploads and you send me a detailed trial balance at the end of every quarter, we generally ask for that to be submitted by the end of the month following the end of a quarter. So we've got one coming up here, October 30th. Will be when we're looking for your first quarter trial balance. It's easy peasy. It's very easy for your business folks to provide. And if they have any questions, they can reach out to me or Paula or anybody on my team. Any questions about that? And I put our contact information in the chat. You will be hearing from Rebecca if we don't see those trial balances. She's pretty good at sending out reminders. That's it right now. That's all there is. Very short and sweet. Back to you, Sandy.
Yeah, I just realized I was muted. I was just saying thank you, Barb, and thank you everybody for coming. We will make sure that you all receive copies of the PowerPoint so you have those links to the COAS information. We will also keep you updated on the October 1st count and your responsibilities for that. And when our COAS trading becomes live on our new LMS system as well. So thank you. Have a great evening.